Thank you. We're going to start out with just some housekeeping by introducing our clerk and our attorney. I'll ask you to introduce yourself, Bob and Emma.
My name is Robert Asplund, and I've been a clerk on this committee for, this will be the 8th year. And as Chairman Austin reminds me, I've had a different chairman every 2-year session. It's not an omen, I don't think, but anyway.
Thank you for that reminder. Yeah. And Emma.
Hi, I'm Emma Buck. I am the staff attorney, the DLS attorney for House Transportation, and I'm going to blame Robert and not me for all of the chair switches. This will be my 7th year staffing for DLS, 5th with Transportation.
Thank you. And,
I'm George Kane. I'm the room clerk for this meeting, and I'll be managing the virtual room.
Okay, well, this will be the first meeting that I have chaired, but I feel very confident that with this very capable staff that we'll accomplish what we need to. And so we will be entertaining testimony from virtual and in person, as you're accustomed to. And hopefully that will all go seamlessly. Anybody that here in the committee, just a reminder that you need to press the button on your microphone and please use your request to speak button. And we'll, I think we have the whole committee here now. Great. Again, we're being live streamed, and if there are any amendments as you come to present your bill, please remind us of that. If you have an amendment, obviously we're going to leave the decision whether or not to introduce that in your hands, and I suspect if you've communicated that properly, Emma will have a copy. If we don't have distributed copies, we'll take care of that. And the process of recording missed votes, I'm sure you pretty much have heard enough already that you can enter your vote if you're not here, but that vote cannot change the outcome of the total vote when the vote is totaled here in the committee. Unless there is a motion made within a certain period of time, perhaps you could help me with that time frame, Emma. If there's a motion to reconsider, that would have to be presented as a motion within
During the meeting.
During the meeting,
or the next meeting,
or
by the end of the next meeting,
or by the end of the next meeting. So that's the motion to reconsider.
It must be the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
The motion must be brought by someone on the prevailing side from the original vote.
Yes. Okay. Thanks, Bob. So I'm just going to go over a couple of calendar dates here. Things are starting to pick up, and so the deadline to file bills or joint resolutions is January 21st by 3 p.m. February 10th is the last day that Transportation will meet to consider House bills. That's the full Transportation Committee. February 15th is the last day that the House will consider House bills. February 16th is when the House will consider Senate bills only beyond that point. And February 24th is the last Transportation meeting when revenue bills will be considered. What does HCO stand for, Bob?
House Committee Operations.
Thank you. Okay, House Committee Operations policy on signs. I don't see any signs here today, but if you are intending to bring a sign, or that we would ask you that not be held up in a way that obstructs anyone's view of the proceedings. Better yet, that sign would perhaps be kept in the hallway. And likewise, any chanting or demonstrating would be better if that were to occur outside the building, again, just so that we don't disrupt this hearing. So with that said, we've had our docket here adjusted a little bit. Delegate Edmonds has asked that House Bill 66 be taken by for the day, and I would entertain a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Second.
I can properly seconded, and so we're going to take that bill by for the day. And House Bill 88, Delegate Washman's bill, we would ask for a similar motion on that. Delegate Washman's not able to be here for health reasons. And thank you. Moved and seconded. So that kind of narrows it down. We do have House Bill 67 and House Bill 386, and we'll go in the order.
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
we do need to take actual voice votes on those.
Yeah, voice votes.
We have the vote, we have the motion in the second.
That sounds right to me. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to back up a little bit on House Bill 66. We have a motion properly seconded. All in favor of taking House Bill 66 by for the day?
Aye.
All ayes and any nays? That's unanimous vote to take that by for the day. And moving back to House Bill 88, we have a motion properly seconded to take House Bill 88 by for the day. All in favor of that?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and so I think we've concluded business on those two. Thank you again, Emily and or Emma. Excuse me. We'll now hear the Delegate Edmonds House Bill 67. Yeah, whatever's your preference. Yeah. I could probably see you better if you're right here, Delegate Edmonds, if that works for you. Yeah.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, and thank you for indulging me with the House Bill 66 by for the day. We spoke with Major Maxey, State Police, and we've got a few little things we need to work out, so hopefully we'll find that to be ready for your next committee meeting. But so House Bill 67, there is an amendment in the nature of a substitute.
And where will we view that, Bob?
It's in there.
Mr. Chairman, if there could be a motion to adopt it, it's now been posted online.
Move to adopt the substitute.
And we need a second, if that is the will of the committee.
I believe we had a second from
Thank
Delegate
you. Yeah,
Tatum.
thank you. Properly moved and seconded. We've adopted your amendment. And,
All those in favor?
all those in favor? Thank you, Bob.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, properly moved and seconded and passed by. So, yeah, please
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, House Bill 67, as an amendment in the nature of a substitute, addresses two problems regarding overlength loads that currently exist. And I do have actually a handout that shows one of the issues. So maybe you could take one and pass it. The first problem in my mind is the requirement for a red flag, which is current code, just says red, is of little use, as the color red is very ambiguous and is often a deep, dark red grease rag oftentimes, or mesh flag that is all but invisible from the rear, especially if the vehicle hauling the load is also a dark color.
Oops.
And the second issue is the size of the flagging, which I'm proposing from 12 to 18 inches would now conform with federal guidelines for overlength loads, which is what I've just handed you. Mr. Chairman, I've always tried to legislate with common sense, and this bill is no exception. The bottom line is that the current red flag really doesn't do anything. You can't see it. Recognizing that there aren't too many 18 by 18 fluorescent flags on the market, I think right now orange is the only one, but that would be satisfied in my bill. I've asked for a delayed enactment clause to July 1 of 2023. Mr. Chairman, this bill kind of came to my attention. I've always kind of noticed it. I live out in the rural area and fully support logging. I sell a lot of timber myself, and I get behind a lot of logging trucks. But we had a young lady was tragically killed in a accident where she actually ran up behind a log truck. Now I'm sure there was some driver inattention. She was a young driver, but perhaps if the flag that was on there had been a fluorescent color, it may have caught her eye and saved her life. So that's basically all I'm doing is changing the color red to fluorescent and changing the size.
Okay, thank you, Delegate Edmonds. Any questions from the committee of the patron?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Bloxham.
Delegate Edmonds, so this would apply not only commercially, but this would be to Joe Blow who goes Saturday morning and gets a piece of timber that sticks out in his pickup truck.
Correct. It would, yes, sir.
Okay, so that flag on a piece of lumber, it doesn't matter if it's a 2x4 or whatever sticks out, you're going to put an 18-inch flag on it.
If it's beyond 4
4 feet.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Any other? Yeah.
So the federal guideline says that it needs to be a fluorescent red or orange flag, but your substitute bill proposes a fluorescent orange, green, or yellow flag. So it doesn't conform with the CFR. What's the purpose for that?
Just to make, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry.
Delegate Edmonds.
Yeah, so just because for availability, and I think as long as it's fluorescent, I think that's more so the issue in my view. If you'd like to amend it to be exactly conform to federal guidelines, I would be amenable to that. But trying to make it more accessible for that type flagging sometimes. And I really do feel like now that the feds have required a larger sign and a fluorescent sign, that your Lowe's, for example, instead of having the red plastic, they just have an orange, fluorescent orange, blaze orange flag. I mean, we're giving them a year or more to do that. So.
Delegate, I would just suggest that the commercial vehicle has to have either red or orange by federal code. So you're going to have, most of them are going to probably have red. And so if a commercial vehicle has a red flag, he would not be in conformance with this bill because you don't allow a red flag to be one of the options. So I would suggest possibly substituting the word red, including with the other colors, just so that the commercial vehicles that are complying with the CFR would not be violating this provision under Virginia law, as a suggestion.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may, you know, I just read in the code section, it says marked, federal code section, marked with red or orange fluorescent. I took that as red fluorescent instead of just red, so maybe I'm misreading the code there. It doesn't say red fluorescent or orange fluorescent. It says red or orange fluorescent, so I know that seems probably silly, but anyway, I would take your amendment if it's what you're proposing is friendly.
Well, before we talk about amendments, I think we'll we have a question from Delegate Watts.
I'm reading my directions here. I'm not sure what they're on my. Green. There we got green. Good. The line of questioning was Mr. Chairman. The line of questioning was in line with what my concerns were. So I will just simply say I think conformity to the Fed is very important. If we add to it, fine. But I don't want anyone who is conforming to the federal regulations be caught up on state regulations that doesn't include the feds. So going beyond is fine, and hope that we can have that amendment so drafted.
Thank you, Delegate Watts. Any other questions? At this point, I understand we have two people that want to provide input virtually, and I think they've indicated that they're in favor of this, so we'll go to them now.
Mr. Chairman,
You wanna
that's
move
the Bennett Parker bill. Believe.
Yeah, that's what the end of the agenda. That's 450. Probably have people on.
Oh, I misunderstood you. Okay, so we have no virtual.
Do we want to adopt that amendment, Mr. Chair?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we amend line 13 to read again, making sure it's the Fed, a fluorescent red, orange, green, or yellow flag. And I want to make sure that phraseology makes all of them fluorescent. And I believe in my grammar it does.
Okay, thank you, Delegate Watts. That is the only amendment before us, if I'm not mistaken. So we have an amendment. Is there a second?
Second.
Committee would that a voice vote?
Yeah. We have just a minor discussion.
Thank you, Delegate Anderson. Yeah, we would entertain discussion on the amendment.
Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Anderson?
I think that the proper way to do this would be to take the strike through of a red and unstrike that on line 13, because I think the delegate is right. The federal code doesn't require the red to be fluorescent. It says marked with red or orange fluorescent. So if we just take the strike through out of what we have as the substitute and just have it read a red, comma, or, and then the rest can be that way. That way there we would meet what my colleague over here said, somebody who would not be out of compliance with that. If a commercial vehicle driver has just a red non-fluorescent flag, they would be in compliance with the federal statute and what we would require under Virginia law.
Mr. Chairman,
Delegate Watts?
again, speaking to the amendment, I totally agree. Since thank you for acknowledging my desire. Can we go ahead and adopt the amendment with the proviso that by the time we get to full committee, we will have checked with exactly how the federal regs are interpreted? Are they interpreted? Because I can read that phrase both ways, that red is also fluorescent along with the fluorescent orange. So adopting it in our best intent with the idea that full committee council will have checked with how the feds interpret theirs.
So we have an amendment before us, and Delegate Watts, would you?
The amendment, as I offered it, was fluorescent, that we insert after fluorescent red, comma, before orange, so that it has all the colors following the word fluorescent, and then we will check it.
Second.
Okay, so we have an amendment proposed and seconded. Emily, have you captured that? Does anyone on the committee want clarification of the amendment as proposed, or is it clear to us what is proposed? Properly moved and seconded. Are we ready to vote on this?
We have to adopt the amendment first.
Okay, so the voice vote would be to adopt the amendment as proposed by Delegate Watts. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Properly adopted, and before us is the
So the
bill
motion now
as to amend.
would be,
Mr. Chair, I move the bill as amended.
so we have a
I'd like
motion to report the substitute as amended.
Yep.
Okay, Delegate Hearing, I'd like to invite the public to speak to the bill as amended.
Sure.
Before we act on your motion.
Okay.
So we have no virtual waiting on this bill. So people in the room, anybody that is in favor of it, please come forward to speak. And after that, we'll probably invite, if there's people here from VDOT or the state police or any agencies, invite them to come forward as next after you speak. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Corey Connors with Virginia Forestry Association. We appreciate Delegate Edmonds bringing this bill and bringing light on a safety situation. We appreciate the fact that this is now going to be aligned with federal code, so we rise in support of it.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Susan Seward with the Virginia Forest Products Association. We also support the bill for the reasons that Mr. Connor stated.
Thank you. Any others in support? Any against the bill? Okay. Is VDOT in the room?
It's actually
Back there.
Joint? Yeah, okay. Inviting testimony.
Mr. Chair, VDOT joined that. We don't have issues.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Joanne.
Linda Ford, DMV Acting Commissioner, and we have worked with Delegate on any issues related to it. We're, even though the administration has no position, we have no problems with the bill. Everything is fine. We'll make some adjustments to our hauling permit regulations to be consistent with that.
Thank you. And Major Maxey?
Major Ron Max, Virginia State Police. I'd agree with some statements that were made with the federal regulations dealing with intrastate as opposed to inter. There is going to be where we have to accept whatever the language was. I was trying real quick to get a hold of my contacts at the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. They responded back, but if the difference between the red fluorescent is going to put conflict, we cannot be in conflict with the federal regulation. I'll try to get clarification before we move, but we can place tighter restrictions on intrastate, just not interstate.
Thank you. And VDOT, Karen, any comments?
No, Mr. Chair, we really are deferring to DMV on this
Yes.
because it does involve all.
Okay, but having heard Major Maxey, you're same position, I assume.
Exactly.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm not clear if Major Maxey would guide us toward possibly amending the amendment. Okay. So would Delegate Watts, would you?
Mr. Chairman, in response, that is what I intended, that we have adopted it, which means our intent is to be in conformity.
Great.
And with full committee, with the help of the information that will be provided, we'll get it in line with feds as we need to.
Very good. Thank you. Any other questions from the committee? Delegate Anderson.
Speaking to the bill, it might just be better to fix it now and just write the words that are in 393.87 for line 13. Just I would actually make an amendment just to verbatim write the words marked with red or orange fluorescent warning flags as the substitute for this, and then it's done. We don't have to worry about conforming or conflicting. It's conforming with federal law. We just verbatim go with that. If the delegate wants to keep the other colors in there, that's fine. But I think we should just write it exactly like 393.87. And I would make a motion to amend the amendment.
Would the delegate consider that a friendly amendment?
Mr. Chairman, I would say it's got to conform. If Major Maxey says it's got to conform, it's got to conform. So I'm good with that. I kind of looked at this as if the feds required red fluorescent, but maybe, I guess if we leave it like that, other than changing the size of the flag, we're really not doing anything. I mean, you can still use a 18 by 18 greasy red rag, for example.
It would.
Your bill would require, like Delegate Watson mentioned, private company, private individuals, something outside their pickup truck. So it would impact that. We're just talking about commercial vehicles and where my concerns come out.
Well then, yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, I would consider
that. We operate by motion. Delegate Anderson, if you are proposing a further amendment, then please make it stated, Emily, and
all right.
Capture that.
So I would move to amend line 13 after the word load, comma, with the words with red or orange fluorescent warning flags, period. And then the remainder of, the remainder would, so the remainder would be each warning flag must be at least 457 milliliters square, 18 inches. So I would move to amend from load, comma, on 13, the rest of that sentence to conform verbatim with the CFR 393.87.
That's the extent of it?
That'd be the extent of it, yes.
Great. Bob, could you restate the motion for us, or Emma?
Well, the motion is before us now is to report the substitute introduced by the patron Edmonds and amended by Delegate Watts and further amended by Delegate Anderson, if we accept this amendment. Yeah, if you accept it.
Okay.
First up to adopt the amendments.
Mr. Chairman, if you would allow me, I would like to make sure that I've got the correct amendment. So what we're talking about is on line 13 of the substitute. We would, after load, comma, A, we would retain red, and we would strike the new language, or we would remove that new language of fluorescent orange, green, yellow. We would, after red, we would say or orange fluorescent flag. Warning flags.
Just like it says in the CFR.
Okay, so we would, so this is flags, and our code has flag singular. Is there an intent to change that?
I would just say verbatim go off of what this says.
Okay, just so that the committee recognizes, then that would increase from 1 flag to 2 flags. It says.
Question for the patron. Could you clarify, does this apply to situations where more than 1 flag would be required on a load?
So
potentially,
I think, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I think if you have, would you mind explaining a log truck?
Mr. Chairman, it's my understanding that the Code of Federal Regulations requires that on any load that's wider than 2 feet, there are 2 flags affixed to the projecting load. So 4 feet is a flagging requirement, and then anything wider than 2 feet wide requires a second flag.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, what, if you will, what that would mean is just if we were changing flag here to flags, plural, as it is in the CFR, that would be putting the requirement for multiple flags on the non-commercial vehicles that are subject to this code section. So there is a substantive change there. So might I say that we could say red or, and again, this is just based on the read of what I think the committee is trying to do.
Thank you.
Red or orange or fluorescent, leave the existing flag not less than, and we could leave striking, we could change it to millimeters if we want, but throughout the code we tend to use inches, so I would recommend keeping the existing language that we have of striking 12, inserting 18 inches. So what we would have would be from the rear of the load, comma, a red or orange fluorescent flag, comma, not less than. I believe that's the intent of the committee. But if I'm misunderstanding the committee, please let me know.
Thank you, Emma. I'm a little reluctant to try to get into the wordsmithing here, but if I understand testimony, there are situations where 1 flag might be required, other situations where more than 1 flag. So I'll partly address this to Delegate Anderson, since it's your potential amendment here. Wouldn't the use of the word flag or flags resolve both situations? Flag if it's singular, flags if more than 1 is required?
I think the word flag is fine, because the commercial vehicle that would have 2 flags on it would not be violating the Virginia code. So I think the word flag for me would be fine, as long as it's red or orange fluorescent. That's what I would want to see.
Thank you. Would the committee like that amendment read again, or do we have a pretty good grasp on what's being proposed?
Discussing the amendment.
I'm speaking to the amendment.
Thank you. Speaking to the amendment, I tend to agree with counsel that I would not have A in there. I would have red or orange fluorescent flags not less than 18 inches, because otherwise I can see somebody looking at a loophole, and I had 1 flag even though my load was 8 foot wide or 6 foot wide, and it did not meet the requirement in such a position as to be clearly visible at all times. And I would prefer to keep those 2 things linked together so that nobody can get off on the fact that, well, I had a flag and that's all that was required. I want to make sure that I'm giving weight to the language clearly visible at all times.
Mr. Chairman, Delegate Watts, My suggestion was that we would leave A and singular flag.
And I am suggesting that it would be better to have plural because it allows enforcement of the language on line 12 in a position to be clearly visible at all times, and one might not do that.
Question to council.
Delegate Bloxham.
So if we go in the direction that Delegate Watts is talking about, then on any load 4 feet beyond the tailgate, you would have to do 2 flags. No matter what the width is. If it's written that way, or am I interpreting that wrong?
If I may respond, Mr. Chairman?
Delegate Watts.
My intent is not that. It's just that one flag is not necessarily complying with the law. That what is complying with the law is flag. You got to have at least one flag, and it's got to be, and the load has to be clearly, the flags have to be clearly visible. And if one flag is not clearly visible, the law says you've got to comply with clearly visible, not just the fact that you have a flag. So that's why I had not the limiting language of a flag being in there, but rather flags.
Well, it's Delegate Watts. Thank you. It's times like this that I appreciate having very reliable counsel from Emma and Ms. Buck. Excuse me. But would you reconcile this for us, please, as best you can? Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, the way that the code is currently written, a single flag would comply as long as it also meets the requirement to be clearly visible from the rear of the load. If we were to go into the direction of flags, plural, I would recommend that we say how many in order to be in compliance, just instead of creating a question of how many, then if it's just plural, how many would be required. And I believe state police may have a thought on this, but this would be setting the minimum flag being the one flag in current law would be the minimum. You wouldn't be prohibited from going over that, but just making a plural without saying how many, I think could end up with an enforcement issue. So if we were to go with flags, I would recommend stating how many, but I believe that state police may have a thought on that.
Thank you, Emma.
Major Max. Just to toss this out, and Delegate Anderson, you're versed on this also. I want to jump in. Commercial vehicles operating in interstate commerce have to comply with the federal regulation. We cannot allow that vehicle to run a 12-inch flag on there. Yeah, I pulled the federal reg, and it is saying 18 square-inch flag. He's not going to be able to operate less than an intrastate vehicle. We can write that language into the code, and we don't even have to allow a red flag. We can allow just what the patron is proposing. We can choose our color, but it would have to be an intrastate. Interstate, we cannot require them to run a 12 or allow them to run a 12-inch flag because they would be a valid federal regulations.
Thank you, Major Max. So I think, Bob, you did a summary, but why don't we review? I think we have passed an amendment, and we have a proposed amendment by Delegate Anderson. Perhaps we need to restate that if the committee wishes. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and act on that. If I missed, is that generally where we?
I think we need a second on that on Delegate Anderson's second amendment to the.
Absolutely, yeah. Emma, we're going to make you earn your keep today.
First bill out of the session.
Sorry.
Here. So that's all right. So, Mr. Chair, I believe if we are going with the amendment as offered by Delegate Anderson, where we are with the current language is on line 13, from the rear of the load, comma, a red or orange fluorescent flag, comma, and then leaving the rest of the substitute as is. And Delegate Anderson, is that correct for your amendment?
That seems to conform. Yes.
Thank you.
So if that amendment's clear to everyone, would entertain a second. Second. Seconded. Discussion on the amendment? Okay. Would,
All in favor of the amendment?
I'm sorry, Bob.
Voice vote on the amendment.
Voice vote on the amendment. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Amendment is passed. And any further discussion on the bill as amended, either from the audience or the committee or the patron?
No, sir. I think we're.
Are you sure?
Report.
We have a motion to report
As amended.
As amended.
as amended.
With a substitute and amendment.
We substituted and amended.
Move to report, substitute
Thank
as
you.
amended.
Thank you. Ready to vote?
We, has there been a second?
Second.
Seconded by Delegate Anderson. Record your vote on the electronic pad, please. Well, we can close the vote as soon as I figure out where to touch the pad. Thanks, Bob. Bob, you can close the vote. A motion passes 8-0.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate it. This is exactly why we have subcommittees, right?
Well, you picked
I appreciate the wisdom of the committee.
You picked a good evening to be here
That's
with
right.
a short docket. Thank you, Delegate Edmonds. Yeah. All right, next bill up is, I did a summary earlier and I skipped right over House Bill 386. Delegate Sullivan, Potomac River Bridge Towing Compact. Ready to hear that bill if you're ready. This works for me if you're comfortable with that.
At the risk of jinxing myself, I think we can do with this one a little faster. I've got no federal regulations involved, no flags involved. Although this does involve an interstate compact. Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, HB 386 is really a very technical bill. It involves the Potomac River Bridge Towing Compact. There are, I think the number is 13 bridges which cross the Potomac between Virginia and either Maryland or the District of Columbia. This compact is between the three jurisdictions, and it allows law enforcement from any of the jurisdictions to go onto any particular bridge to tow vehicles, direct traffic tow vehicles, as if they were in their own jurisdiction. Some of you may remember the name Arlen D. Williams, Jr. Surprised when I looked him up again today. It was almost 40 years to the day that Mr. Williams was on Air Florida Flight 90, the one that crashed into the 14th Street Bridge. He was one of 6 people who survived, and after saving the other 5, he drowned. The bridge has been renamed in his honor, and simply to make sure that that bridge is covered by the compact, what 386 does is add the name of the bridge, the new name of the bridge, into the compact. We have to add that in or it won't be covered by the compact. So that is what 386 does. It adds the Arlen D. Williams Jr. Memorial Bridge into the terms of the compact so that we're in compliance.
Thank you, Delegate Sullivan. A quick question for you. Is there another name for this bridge? Is this the 14th Street Bridge?
Yeah, most of us call it the 14th Street Bridge, but I'll start calling it the Williams Bridge.
Thank you.
Question, Mr. Chairman.
A question from the Delegate Bloxham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Was this bridge was included? They just changed the name of the bridge. Is that correct, or is this bridge
that's
just?
my understanding. They changed the name of the bridge. I would tell you that some very smart person has also added into the language of the bill language which would avoid this situation in the future. If you look at line 25, it says, as they are currently named or may subsequently be renamed.
Thank you.
So that I don't have to come back if we rename
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions from the committee? I don't see anybody in the queue. My understanding, from limited understanding of interstate compacts, is that identical language has to be passed by each of the members of the compact. Is that process in motion? Or
You're exactly right, Mr. Chairman. I should have mentioned. I'm told that both D.C. and Maryland have already taken this action. In fact, they did it in 2020, so we're behind the curve.
Okay. Well, we don't like being behind the curve.
But you're right. All three have to do it.
Good.
Two have, and this will complete the process.
Great, thank you. Any virtual
No.
in queue here? So any testimony from the people who would be in favor of this bill?
Mr. Chair, Joanne Mack, this is actually an agency bill, and it's stuff that Sullivan has described. It's to enable us, Virginia, to its law enforcement to go onto the bridge and provide towing services, et cetera, to facilitate traffic arrests. So we very much.
Thank you. Any other testimony? Form a line behind the patron here. Any other questions from the committee?
Move to report.
Move to report, properly seconded. I think we'll go ahead and vote on this if you're ready. Vote is 8-0. The measure passes. And
Thank you, Mr.
good
Chairman.
job, Mr.
Members of the
Sullivan.
subcommittee, appreciate it.
You're very welcome. And that leads us to House Bill 450. Delegate Bennett Parker, thanks for your patience. And I guess please explain your bill to us and why we need it. And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is HB 450, and I have some line amendments to offer to the committee.
So moved.
Voice vote on that. Would all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Line amendments are passed. Have they been distributed?
Online.
Okay. They're available online. I think I have a paper copy here. But please go ahead and explain your bill as amended by the line amendments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The amendments conform this bill to a similar bill that passed the Senate with wide bipartisan support and make other small changes. If it's okay with you, I'd like to speak to the specifics of the line amendments after I describe the nature of the bill. HB 450 is a common sense bill about property rights. It would protect the investment of businesses that install electric vehicle charging stations to attract customers and serve their patrons. It was brought to me by one of my constituents and likely may affect some of yours. In many cases, businesses like shopping centers, restaurants, and others may voluntarily pay thousands of dollars to install charging ports for electric vehicles. These spots are then designated for electric vehicles only. However, there is currently no mechanism for enforcing these designated parking spaces and no law prohibiting non-electric vehicles from parking in them. This bill creates a civil penalty for any person who parks a non-electric vehicle in a parking space clearly marked as reserved for charging. It is permissive for the local governing body as to whether they adopt an ordinance in accordance with this section. If a locality does not want to adopt an ordinance, they do not have to. Spaces reserved for specific purposes should be enforceable so that they are utilized for those purposes, just like there are penalties for parking in a loading zone or a space for people with disabilities. Both private and public dollars are being invested in charging infrastructure. The bipartisan federal infrastructure bill is sending $106 million to Virginia to support the expansion of an EV charging network in the state. And I believe we all want to be good stewards of that money and protecting that investment. 15 states, including North Dakota and Florida, already have this common sense legislation on their books. The amendments made 4 simple changes to this bill. First, the bill now has more defined language as to what proper signage should look like at the EV spots that is clear for everyone. Second, there is a clarification that only spots that have a charging station adjacent to the sign may qualify. Third, there was a towing aspect to the penalty that has been removed. And finally, the penalty has also been lowered to a maximum of $50. And again, I'd remind the committee that it's permissive to localities as to whether or not they choose to adopt an ordinance in accordance with this section. I hope you all agree that businesses and localities should have the ability to enforce designated parking spots, and we'll report this bill to the full committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Delegate. So I guess I'll fire away the first question. The idea of having charging stations on private property, would this bill allow a fine to be imposed for parking a vehicle in a properly marked spot on private property?
If by private property you mean a shopping center? Or?
I guess a shopping center is private property.
Yes.
Yes.
So if there is a space designated for an electric vehicle. It has a sign that says only electric vehicles. There is a charger adjacent to that spot. Then yes, a fine may be assessed if a local body has adopted an ordinance to enforce the.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that wasn't meant to be a gotcha question. It's a very simple bill. You explained it very well. If I may ask council to advise, would that be unique to this bill? I generally don't think of law enforcement as having the authority to come on private property and issue a ticket, which would have a fine. Delegate Anderson, are you in queue yet with the comment?
I definitely can talk.
Okay, but I'll continue my question to council here. I just help educate me if you would on this.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, law enforcement does have authority on roads open to the public to enforce traffic laws. And I know that state police is here as well. They may want to speak as to that. But I do just want to clarify one thing, that this bill does create a traffic infraction and statewide, and also would allow for localities to also adopt an ordinance, which is very common for what we do in the traffic code. But I do just want to make sure that is clear.
And you probably answered my question, but I may have missed it. So question for the patron first. Do you envision charging stations being installed on private property? We'll say in a private parking lot. And if this is it your intent that this would apply in that situation, and if the answer is yes, then I'm going to ask Emma for a little bit further clarification.
I guess my understanding is that it would, similar to how someone who parks in a handicapped parking spot may be treated. My understanding was similar to that.
Okay, thank you. That seems like a good analogy. So the answer is that there is a precedent for.
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
okay.
Mr. Chairman, that's what I was trying to say with parking. As long as it's open to the public, law enforcement has the authority to enforce.
Thank you. Other questions from the committee? We have Delegate Anderson in queue.
Delegate Bennett Parker, thank you very much for meeting with me ahead of time and in good faith hearing my concerns, and thank you very much for removing the towing component of that. I think that is appropriate. I do support the bill as written. However, I would encourage you to consider allowing this bill to apply to any restricted zones that the landowners would have, whether it's veteran parking or parking designated just for pregnant mothers. I think that the handicap thing makes a lot of sense because it obviously impacts a certain person. But as this bill progresses, I would encourage you to consider it being a penalty for any restricted parking that the landowner would place, not just for electronic vehicles. But as it is now, I'm in support of what you've proposed.
Thanks, Delegate Anderson. Delegate Herring?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And it's just,
thank you. There are recommendations of adding pregnant mothers and veterans, but I'm just going to be honest. I don't know how one would have to someone had to prove their pregnancy status. A vehicle, you can see if it's electric or not, and I'm just concerned about privacy issues if we do that. Just a little flag, a little concern. That's all.
Thank you for the comment. The evening is young. We could hammer that out. But, Delegate Bloxham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question. Would the car have to be charging, even though if the car is in an EV and you're in a parking spot, would you have to be charging, or would it be akin to me going to the gas pump and not getting gas, but you understand what I'm saying? I mean, is there any requirement that there be using it?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. To the delegate, I would say that I think certainly the intent of the bill is that they would be charging, and I'd certainly consider that a friendly amendment to add language as such to make that very clear.
Any other questions or comments?
Delegate Parker, you would be okay with the electric vehicle in the electric vehicle spot receiving a ticket if it wasn't charging. Is that what you, I think that's what you just said, but I just want to make sure that's what you meant.
Mr. Chairman, I thank the delegate for his question. I think that I was interpreting Delegate Blacksum's as concern that someone could stay in the spot after they were charging. And I was trying to address that, but I think Delegate Anderson makes an excellent point. And so I would be happy with whatever the will of the committee would be on that part of the subject.
Since thank you. Since that hasn't been entered as a motion, I'm just going to throw out my 2 cents in that I think I understand the gist of your bill, and I think will be supporting it. The idea of putting a law enforcement in charge of monitoring charging, I'm not sure that's necessary. Certainly a good point to be raised, and Delegate Blox and I have just talked about this briefly, and so I'll just throw that out. Again, valid point, but I think we're probably safe to assume that most of the vehicles that would use a electric vehicle parking space would be there to charge. It is an assumption, wouldn't apply always, but it's up to you, Delegate Blox, if you want to propose an amendment. If not, then if there's no more questions from the committee, we will ask anybody that's here to speak in favor of the, and we actually, why don't we go to the virtual? Thank you, Bob, for reminding me. We have 2 people here to speak. Well, we're going to go to in favor of first. Yeah, so the 2 in queue, please.
Mr. Chairman, you have 2 speak in favor of the bill. The first is Mr. Charles Jarina from Drive Electric RVA. Mr. Jarina.
Yes, good afternoon, members of the subcommittee. My name is Charles Jarina, and I'm a resident of Chesterfield County and an electric vehicle owner for 8 years and the lead organizer of Drive Electric RVA. Can everybody hear me okay?
Just fine.
Awesome. I submitted my comments through the website, so I'll be brief. And just to reiterate why we support HB 450. The bill protects public and private investments in charging infrastructure in Virginia. That will continue to grow as more people buy EVs, as the point the delegate made earlier. I've heard personally from EV owners in Virginia being blocked from charging at a station because a gasoline car was parked there. So it's not a sort of an abstraction. It's actually a real problem that will only get worse over time as more charging infrastructure is put in and more more people decide to buy electric vehicles. And so I think it's great to see that Virginia is trying to get a little bit ahead of the curve as this trend is occurring and putting the necessary regulations in place to protect access to that, which is particularly important to people who do not have access to charging otherwise. I'm very fortunate that I have a home and a driveway where I have my charging station, but there are folks that live in apartment buildings, that live in other situations where they don't have off-street parking. And so they rely on public charging. And so, to the point, the comparison of going to a gas station and a car is parked there, well, you can just go to another gas station or go to the next pump over. In some situations, it may be the only charging station that's around, and you'll pull up to it. And if there's a car parked there, you can be in a bit of a trouble. So, to the point about about the necessary aspect of it, again, getting ahead of the curve, a bit ahead of the curve before this problem grows. In other states that have higher levels of electric vehicle charging, electric vehicle adoption, like California, other even in cases in Maryland, this has been a much more significant issue. And so the fact that Virginia is getting a little bit ahead here while the market is still growing, but still not to the point where there's a lot of problems going on. I think that's great to be proactive. So I thank you for your time and for your consideration.
Thank you for your input, Mr. Janera. And in queue, we also have...
Second speaker is Steve Banashek from Sierra Club, Virginia.
Okay, we have a different name showing on the screen. Yeah, okay. And whenever you're ready, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to testify. I'm a resident of Alexandria, Virginia, and I'm also an EV owner, and I'm the electric vehicle chair for the Virginia chapter of the Sierra Club. And we are in support of the bill for a lot of the points mentioned. And I did submit my comments on the written aspect. So I just wanted to add that I've witnessed, I've owned an EV for 7 months, and I've actually witnessed a few times where a gasoline vehicle has been parked in an EV charging space. So it does happen, as Mr. Jarina said. It's not a frequent problem. I don't have a charger at home, so I do rely on public charging. And I think this bill does get ahead of the curve. So again, we support the bill, and thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone here to speak against the bill? I think maybe already asked that. One additional question, and in case the committee has any questions, how do we know a vehicle? So if someone's patrolling the parking lot or there's been a complaint, how does one identify an electric vehicle? Is it pretty obvious?
My understanding is that it is, Mr. Chairman. I would also imagine that being connected to the charging infrastructure would also be a way to identify it.
Any other questions from the committee? We operate by motion.
Move to oppose, in opposition.
I think I ask in opposition? Okay. So there's a move to report the bill as the substitute as amended?
Just with amendments.
As amended? Thank you.
Second.
And seconded. So please register your vote on the electronic board.
I don't see it line up.
Here we go.
Amendments, Clara.
Delegate, congratulations. You're on the uncontested docket, it would appear.
Thank you,
It passes 7-0. Having no more additional business before us, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Committee's adjourned. Hey, thanks.